Hey guys, and welcome to another NIKKE Goddess of Victory video. Today, we will be taking a look at the NIKKE Japanese meta tier list to see which characters they think are the best, and I will also go over some of the units that are very underrated outside of the Japanese meta. And during this video, hopefully you'd be able to learn a thing or two and apply it in your team comps. But first, a quick shoutout to LDPlayer for sponsoring this video. LDPlayer is a free Android emulator for PC that provides the fastest performance for Android gaming. This has been my go-to emulator for playing NIKKE and other mobile games I want to play on PC. LDPlayer has a built-in widescreen landscape mode that will give you a better view of your favorite waifus in combat. After you install LDPlayer using my link in the description, all you have to do is go to the LDPlayer settings, click on other settings, and simply enable the forced landscape mode. After this, you can open up NIKKE Goddess of Victory and enjoy the game in its full glory on a bigger screen. This will help you see more enemies on the field, and of course, you will have a better view of your favorite units. Definitely check out LDPlayer using my link in the description below, and a big thanks to LDPlayer for sponsoring this video. So the very first thing that you will notice from the tier list is that the characters for each of the rankings are separated into their respective burst types, which I think is a really good way to sort the characters. At the very top of the SS tier, they have Lighter, Volume, and Rapunzel. And compared to the NA tier list that they have over at Pridewin, the only common unit on this tier list is Lighter. And she's on top of the list because she just has a lot of utility to give her team. She has shields, buffs, and she also decreases the burst skill cooldown. And the same thing goes with Dala and Volume. It seems like they really value the cooldown reduction for their teams, and we are also seeing the same thing now for the NA meta with the release of Helm, because they'd want to decrease her cooldowns as much as possible. Also taking into consideration that cooldown reduction makes a lot of sense because most characters in the game have a 40-second cooldown on their burst and are reliant on using their burst or going to full burst mode to activate a major part of their kit. And next we have the dark horse on top of this tier list in the form of Rapunzel. I really think that she is very underrated outside of the Japanese meta because when you first take a look at her, the glaring issue that you will see is her 60-second burst cooldown, which can be a turn off for most players, but as you progress into the game, she really gets more value, especially in more difficult content. This SS tier rank is probably for what they consider to be the best team in the game. You have Volume or Lighter for your burst type 1 slot, Dala for your burst type 2, so they will help Rapunzel with her cooldown issue, and then you have Haran and Scarlet, who are undoubtedly the best DPS characters in the game. This is overall a very well-rounded team if you were to use this, so I highly approve of their SS tier units. Next up is the S tier. I mostly agree on the placements for this tier. You have the top tier healers on burst type 1, and their order makes sense. Same goes with the top defensive units on burst 2. The only thing I don't quite agree with is Snow White being ranked lower than Privity and Alice. I will try to put up my personal rankings for this tier specifically, but from what I see, it seems like they really value team utility on this tier list. And the reason why I think Snow White is so good is that she has a very high burst potential, and she is one of the very few characters who can cover all different ranges and distances from the enemies. And because of that, I really think she has a lot of value as a character. There is another outlier on this tier list, and it's Bestie. When you take a look at the Pridewin tier list, they listed Bestie as having no pros, which I don't personally agree with. Because when you look at her burst skill, it has an effect that decreases the full burst time for your team. And now you're probably asking, why is this a good thing? You are literally taking away half the duration of your full burst mode. The reason why this is good is that there are a lot of skills and passives in the game that only trigger once you enter full burst mode, like Private's skill 1, Ludmilla's skill 2, and Eunice's skill 1, just to name a few. And after that, the buffs that you trigger will stay on the characters even if you exit the full burst mode early. And that means exiting the full burst mode early will give you more time to recharge your burst meters again and let you trigger another full burst mode, applying the buffs one more time. This is really good in specific team comps, but of course Bestie is not going to be the most meta-defining character in the game. I'm just saying that if you happen to have her, she is not completely useless because she does have a niche supporting capability that I know a lot of people are not aware about, and this could be useful in your team. Next up is A tier, and I have a lot of questions why they ordered these characters this way. First, there's a lot of characters that are ranked way too low when you compare them to the other ranked on S tier, namely Ludmilla, Guillotine, and Brid. I also think that Yunhwa and Isabel should be ranked lower on this tier list because I don't really see them getting much value, especially in later stages of the game. And here we have probably the most underrated SSR character in the Japanese meta, which is novel. They ranked her near the end of A tier, and I really think that she deserves to be at least at low S tier. First of all, she has a 20-second cooldown, which is already a big advantage, and she also has decent survivability with her skill 2, and she has a really good defense shred on her skill 1, which also has a very short cooldown. But based on how the previous characters were ranked, I think they placed her very low because she doesn't have much buffing abilities for her team, which, as we've seen from the beginning of this tier list, they highly value the team utility over everything else. Next up is B tier. My first nitpick about this tier is that the fact that they ranked Rappi on the same tier as Mihara. Neon and Rappi should absolutely be ranked higher just because of the fact that they bring so much value to their team, and you can see a lot of people still using them in some team comps even in later stages of the game. Aside from that, the other characters are really not that good. Solene would have been a good character because she is the only burst type 3 character that has a 20-second cooldown, but aside from that, she doesn't bring anything else to the table. Overall, I agree with most of the placements on this tier list. There are just a handful of characters which I think are really good and deserve to be placed higher. And on a side note, they also have a user voted tier list, which is really cool to see. This is where you can give each character a score, and the rankings change because of that. And as expected, Lighter is the number 1 unit in this tier list, but surprisingly, Guillotine is number 2. I somewhat agree to that, but her playstyle is too high of a risk, but also very rewarding at the same time. Maybe that's why people shy away from using her. Although I'm not quite sure how this exactly works. What if someone just goes and spams a high score on a bad unit? But at first glance, this user voted tier list seems somewhat sensible to me. With all that said, hopefully this gave you a different perspective on how to go about building your teams, and it's also nice to have variety in what to look for in your team comps, rather than just a cookie cutter formula that you're using on everything. I also hope that I shine some light onto some of the underrated characters like Rapunzel, so if you happen to have her, she's definitely worth using and you can test her out in your team comps. As always, if you like this video, don't forget to drop a like, comment, subscribe. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you on the next one. Peace.